Okay, last class we looked at architecture part one of the original Trade Center, and we're going to continue with that one with part two. Last class we talked about the bathtub. I just wanted to show you this particular image here, which is actually at the 9/11 Memorial. So if you ever get to the 9/11 Memorial, you can actually see an exposed portion of this slurry wall that we had talked about in the last screencast. Last screencast, we also mentioned the pile that filled up the bathtub and then kind of comes out. And that's exactly what all of these rescue workers are on top of, a pile. In this particular image here, we see a portion of the South Tower under construction. Take note of the crane here. Take note of the tridents that go into the ground, the trees that branch out. And this is again in the 9/11 Memorial. And these squares are actually if you were to follow this, let's say all the way down, this is where that goes into the bedrock, right? Into the earth right there. So I guess to complete the 9/11 Memorial, these things were cut as they protrude out of the earth. So this man here is on the street level, and keep in mind this is probably about 70 feet below street level. Here's an interior shot. Notice the elevators. Notice the visitors that are trying to get to the observation deck. And you see a lot of open space here. Definitely a lot of open space from the center column to this side right here. Remember last class we mentioned a couple of things. These distinctive lines, for some reason there's one and there's two there, and that this area, the dirt was removed, put across the street in this landfill area to create new property for Lower Manhattan. So the North and South Tower, this is the cover of a Port Authority brochure. Here you have the South Tower with the observation deck, the North Tower with the antenna, and the North Tower, there was actually a restaurant with elevated seating to give panoramic views of the city. The greatest restaurant in the world. And here you see some devastation after the 9/11 attacks, and you can see the trees and tridents kind of draped over. Let's say this is the South Tower over here, and yeah, see the floors somewhat intact and exposed. Okay, so in this image here, they're building the floor, which is completed, and they're placing the steel curtain exterior on the outside. So as these floors are being put and finalized, the outside is used as a second reinforcement. The steel was shipped from New Jersey into Manhattan. This image here, okay, let's analyze this one. Notice the center column, the core. This is where all of your elevators and your three staircases would be located. Notice the four cranes. These things were from Australia. These cranes were designed to use hydraulic lift systems to lift themselves above the place where you're working. So you would get, these floors completed, put this outside skin, and then once you got to a certain height, these cranes would lift themselves up so they could assist with moving material for the construction of the building. Notice the beam connecting this to the exterior. This actually is going to have a rubber shock system that will be addressed in a later image. So definitely a important picture here because it addresses a lot of the unique features of this particular building. Here we have the street level. You have those distinct lines, once again, that I have stressed several times. Here they are once again. Notice the straight lines. These buildings were not liked when they were in the planning phase, not liked when they were finished. The people felt that they were dull, that they had no soul to them, and there was a comment that said that the two buildings look like the boxes that the Empire State Building had come in. This is a New York Times article. I don't remember what year, 68, 69. It was designed to show what the buildings are going to look like, but People point out that the plane is definitely something that is, you know, some sort of prophecy there. Anyway, these towers are ugly. It was not, if it were not for these three individuals, people did not, come to appreciate these buildings until these three individuals did what they do. Philippe Petit, if you were not aware, he put a tightrope wire, and he walked from one building to the next and back and forth, and you can look him up and you can see video of him getting arrested, and you can see some photographs of that. The other two individuals, you see a baseline jumper. I think that's the right term, just jumps right off. And then you have a toy maker, inventor, who makes these unique locks, and he scales up the building. So feel free to look these three individuals up and look for the human spider. And this is the guy who walks up the building. Pretty scary. Since we're in central Jersey, any of you go to Nassau, Princeton University, if you enjoying the day, keep in mind that this building here, Roberts Hall, was designed by the same architect for the Trade Center. Notice the lines. Notice how this actually looks like the first couple of floors of the North and South Tower. And we have just another image showing you the landfill. New Jersey would be on this particular side. Shot of the slurry wall after the debris was removed after the 9/11 attacks. And here we see the new Trade Center. And here you see an image that is trying to figure out the force that wind might have on these two buildings, especially since the two buildings were close to each other. So you think about the wind coming in this direction, it's going to hit this side of the building, and it's going to put pressure on this. What is the building going to do? Is the building going to move with it? What about wind that gets caught up in this particular area? So this force seemed to be problematic during the design, and they calculated that these things were going to move, and they were going to move at a maximum of 7 feet. So if you were on the higher floor, just keep that in mind. You possibly could feel these buildings sway. When they were designing these buildings, they put people in chambers, and they tried to move the floor around and try to get people dizzy to see, whether or not these individuals are going to be able to, work in these buildings with all the movement. But they never told them about the experiments. They just wanted to see if these individuals would become nauseous and things like that. When we look at this new building here, notice the angles right here. We got another one right here, another one here. This was designed to prevent this, so the wind would hit, and because this building has so many angles, the thought here is that the wind, let's say coming in this direction, would just kind of deflect off the building, whereas here there really is nowhere to go. The building is just going to absorb all of that wind pressure. Staircase and center. So we talked about this in the last screencast, that there are 1, 2, 3 staircases and a series of elevators. This was designed to maximize open space. If we look at this particular building here, all of these steel beams are going to prevent an open floor plan, which was the point of the North and South Tower, to maximize the occupancy. And the downside is that you have these floors that are attached to the center core, and then attached to the side of the building, and it really tells the tale of 9/11 and possibly one of the other contributing factors for bringing these buildings down. And let's not even forget the escape routes that are going to be severed when these planes enter the buildings. So again, count on 1, 2, 3 staircases. Notice how stairway 3 reaches 108 floors, and 2 of the stairs go up to 110. So let's just say you're in 110, and you have to get down to 108. That might be problematic, depending on some of those escape routes, and if some of those hallways and staircases are filled with debris. So when we look at the miracle of Stairway A, that's actually looking at the South Tower when 175 hits the building. Notice how 175 is at a lower impact. Notice how it's in a close proximity to this line here. This line here, I told you to keep an eye out for those lines. 175 winds up hitting in an area where there are a lot of elevator machines, and these elevator machines slow down flight 175 to the point where it leaves stairway A open, that you could actually be above the impact zone and get all the way down. Whereas stairway B and C, those things have been destroyed. So if you were up here, you could only go so far. These staircases have been destroyed. You would have to know which of the staircases is the one that is open. Another complicated feature in the design, you would think that the staircase goes all the way down. Like if you're in a building 10 floors up, like you're pretty much just in one area. You're going down, then you're kind of on the platform here, and then you're going down again. You're just kind of in this little confined area. Well, to go around a lot of those elevator machines that we talked about there before, at some point, those stairwells, you have to leave in what becomes known as a transfer hallway. So it's like you go down, you're coming down these stairs here, you go down. Now you're actually leaving, going through the transfer staircase hallway so you can continue going down the hallway or the stairs. And so that definitely could be problematic. Why is this an issue? Well, one of those transfer cases is severed. That's an issue. Number two, you need to know that these things exist. I mean, you go out the wrong door. Maybe you started last week. That definitely can be problematic for you. Notice how Stairway 3 has one single transfer at the 76th floor. Imagine that, just one transfer case. So that could mean the difference between life and death. Whereas Stairways 1 and 2 seems to have 1, 2, 3, 4 of these particular transfer cases. So again, here you are trying to get down. You would actually leave the staircase, and it kind of bends, and then you would. So that's how you continue going down. Just again, it seems to be another complicated issue that is just definitely going to keep some people lost. In this image here, I put flight 11 in comparison to 175. The floors that were impacted by the by the two flights. And again, stressing that point that there is only one single transfer at the 76th floor, which is significant, which is right here is what they're addressing. When we look at this image, you see again that one staircase going down, but boom, you have to know how to navigate this. And now we get to the lines. Remember, I keep talking about the lines. Those are actually called sky lobbies. Interesting. You have 110 floors, and the last thing you would want is to have everybody here and people, 10 people are on this elevator, and somebody's going to the 30th floor and others going to the 5th. And you are trying to get all the way up to the top. So what they did was they actually created two zones. These are lobbies, and these lobbies have extra support. And again, you would have to know how to navigate. Notice how there is one elevator that's going all the way down. Notice how if you wanted to get, let's say, to these floors, you would have to know to get in this particular elevator. So you would get in this elevator, get to this lobby floor, and then you would get in another elevator that would take you to only floors in this designated area. If you wanted to get to this section here, then you would have to know to get into this particular elevator. Why does this matter? Well, it matters because these areas, again, have more machinery. These areas have more support. And that is what is going to allow a little more time for these buildings to stay up. They are also going to allow people to be able to get to those lobbies and then continue to use the elevators to get down, hopefully. However, when those planes do enter the buildings, they did cut off a lot of the wiring that was necessary to keep elevators functioning. So that definitely is going to be yet another issue. Here you see some of this one staircase, and it says 16-inch wide gypsum wallboard planks. They're referring to this 16 inches, 16. Gypsum wallboard is actually sheetrock. This is what your wall is made out of. Wherever you are right now, just tap on the wall. Sounds hollow. It's about a ½ inch. I'm going to bet you could punch right through that. So the question is, why is this staircase protected by ½ inch gypsum board? You know, those planes are just easily going to be able to go right through that. We have some more images. People trying to escape using the ferry system to try to get out to Staten Island, anywhere in New Jersey, and the mass exodus using the ferries. I want you to write this name down and read this story or listen to, some of these survivor stories here. It says that he was on the 81st floor of the South Tower. The second tower struck that day. He was one of 18 survivors from the impact zone. Very interesting story, these two individuals. So feel free to listen to what they have to say. In his interview, he talks about how he wound up seeing Flight 175 as it enters the South Tower. Exterior load-bearing walls. So just to finish up on some of this architecture stuff, again, all of the support, the center steel structures is in the center core, and you have to then attach this to the outside exterior. So here you see the plane entering the building, and it's really just starting to eat away at some of that steel. This is something that's called a fire block. Fire block is used in all kinds of construction, and it is designed to just prevent air from building behind a wall. So some places the code might be for every 10 feet, you have to have it sealed. And fire block is really designed to just buy you time. So here it reads, in buildings, fire block and a ceiling is once again used to slow down the rate of a fire speed. So you spray this fire block on all of the steel, and this is what is going to help slow it down. So let's just say without this fire block, maybe the steel starts to deteriorate in 3 minutes. Yet with this fire block, it takes 6 minutes. So maybe that extra time allows you an opportunity to get out. So the story is, if we can imagine the outside of the North and South Tower, is that the floors, remember, there were 110 floors stacked on top of each other, and then the outside exterior kind of held it all in. Think about that. Put 110 pancakes together and then put a piece of wood on each side. I doubt those pancakes are going to tip over. Well, the issue here is that the fuel from the jetliners was so hot that it actually started to eat away at the area that attached the floor to the exterior column. And once one floor falls, it lands on the next, and then on the next, and before you know it, you have 110 floors coming down. Do a Google search, a YouTube video search for the North and South Tower collapsing, and you can kind of see, if you have that understanding, like people thought these buildings were just going to tip over, but they didn't. They were kind of self-contained inside of the building itself. And I mentioned something before about the rubber, the dampers. And so this is showing you the floor construction. And they're showing you this area right here. Remember we said that, about 4 to 7 feet of sway, which meant the building moved. So they wind up using this, it's almost like a car shock, that it would allow this particular floor to kind of to move. I mean, if it was, and it was made out of a rubber material. I mean, it wasn't steel to steel, because steel to steel would be very rigid. And so again, this is what's used to attach the floor, as they're showing you here, the floor steel column to this exterior wall. And then you get the floor. So if we look at this image here, just imagine like this image this bar being attached to this side, and then on this side being attached to the center core that we had talked about before. So that's it for the trade center. I mean, shock absorbers for the twin towers. Like I said, that was there to try to, allow the building to move. We talked about the bathtub, the central staircase, the subway elevator system, and the exterior skin or the curtain. Anybody else interested, you can look at the Port Authority video on the building, and this is a very interesting video. It's a evacuation video for the trade center. So this was actually something that was used, and it'll give you some idea of how these buildings would be evacuated on a normal day. And here we have some closure questions just to think about.